Cool. Are you at Bitcoin Nashville?
I am not, no.
Oh, I saw
I
that
don't
you
really go
posted
many places.
Word. I'm stoked to get into this. Let's we can start immediately if you're cool with that.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Perfect. All right, I'm gonna run a little intro and then we'll dive right in. What's good? Satoshi's mom here. I am here with the absolute fucking legend, Diid, and I'm stoked to get into this and to talk with you about your journey, a bit about your story, and kind of how you got to where you're at today, Diid. I really appreciate you coming through, man. Thanks for coming on the pod, man.
Yeah, happy to be here. What an introduction.
Well, dude, I mean, you really deserve an epic introduction. I mean, creating Efficax, which I pronounce it Efficax. Is it Efficax or Efficax?
Efficax is how I pronounce it as well. I always joke that everything I name is in writing first because it goes on Twitter or goes on chain or wherever else. So I don't really know how to pronounce anything, but I do. But yeah,
Well,
Efficax is what I refer it to, and I think most
right.
other people do as well.
Yeah, so you've created Efficax, which is basically the leading on-chain software in a sense, or tool rather, to be able to put art on chain. You've made it for ETH mainnet, you've made it for ETH on base, and you received a grant from the Nouns DAO in order to fund advancing art, which is absolutely sick. I can't wait to talk more about that. You've done a lot for this space, including helping XCOPY with getting his first piece of on-chain art onto the blockchain, right? Stoked to talk a little bit about that too. But overall, man, like, again, thanks for coming through. I want to start with a little bit about like, who is Diid? Like, how did you get into this space? When did your obsession with on-chain art, if you call it an obsession or whatever we call it, but the journey of you getting into this game, like, how did that happen? And when did you get started making art and learning about on-chain dynamics?
For sure. Blockchain wise, it's been a while. I think I'm past my decade wandering around this space aimlessly. I joined when I was in college. We were mining Dogecoin in my dorm room because we didn't pay for power. We ended up getting almost
Wow.
nothing with our, little gaming laptops and stuff like that. But yeah, I've been in and out of the space for quite a long time. Um, you know, buying high, selling low, the way that things roll.
Naturally.
Artwork wise, I started out kind of getting inspired by a lot of art box projects and kind of long form generative art. I got my degree in computer engineering and have been a software engineer since I graduated. So I have decent programming chops and figured out I could make some cool visual stuff with that. So got really deep into that and was really deep into that for a little over a year and a half. And then slowly just kind of transitioned to viewing art in a different way. I think a lot of the popularization of AI changed my mindset on that, where I, as an engineer and a generally scrappy, creative builder person, could start to use technology and machines and things like that to create really good art that didn't have to necessarily be computer art. So that's kind of how all of this started and how I got deep into what I'm doing now.
Very interesting. When did this happen? You said a decade ago. So is that 2014?
Well, I mean, I only started doing generative art, geez, 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, something along those lines. So
Nice.
it
Kind of
hasn't
in
been
line
very
with art
long that
blocks.
I've considered myself an artist.
Interesting, man. That's cool though. So it's like the background that you have basically primed you to realize like the potential of this space and
Yeah,
your own potential.
yeah, for sure. I think I've always been a little bit scrappy and willing to do whatever it takes to like build something, get something done. I've always wanted to create. I didn't really know personally what art could look like for me. I didn't know that was a path for me until the advent of NFT and blockchain art in particular. So, yeah, it was kind of just like a natural process where my personality and my way of thinking about things fit into this thing we call crypto art.
Sick. Like I want to talk too about like Efficax. Like when
Mm,
you created that, how was it born? Was it the problem that you were facing of like, how do I get stuff on chain in a cool way? And you just built the tool for yourself? Or was the vision larger than that? How did that get started? Because that's an epic tool. It's helped
yeah,
so many people get on chain.
yeah. I mean, it's my first piece I ever deployed fully on chain was in the range of like point 0.4 ETH. It was a
Damn.
significant amount. It was all of the money that I had saved up. And luckily it, sold pretty well right away and I was able to do it again and do it again and do it again. So I was very lucky in that sense, but I didn't want to have to be lucky. I wanted to be able to mint things on chain and not rely on it selling in order for me to continue creating. That's a pretty big bet to make on yourself and also on an ever changing market. So that was a big part of the motivation to start and get that cost down. A lot of that was figuring out how to make my images smaller before they even went out there. But the process of putting something on chain previously was really convoluted and very error prone and hard to explain to people and hard to do myself. So if you were throwing something on chain for point 0.1, point 0.2, point 0.4, or whatever, and it failed, now not only are you betting on your art selling, like you're just shit out of luck. So Efficax was kind of a combination of helping myself put artwork on chain cheaper and easier, with the easier being less error prone. So that was a big part of it. And then I'm a big fan of just kind of taking, it's only like 10 or 20% of the extra effort to make something available for everybody to use. It's not a lot of effort to go and do that. And that is what I did. And I made it really basic. It was, it looks like a website from the 90s at first. It's since been redesigned, but I made it really basic and really straightforward and really scrappy and just ugly. And people used it because it was relatively easy to use. It was relatively straightforward and it saved them money and taught them about this form of art. So, yeah, the response to it was definitely a little bit surprising. But it was kind of just intended for me, and I used it all the time. So I knew that it had the potential to be helpful for other people.
I think the best tools are born out of like, hey, there's a problem that I'm facing. I'm passionate about solving. Build that
Mhm.
result, that solution rather, and then obviously other people will find value in that too. Like, Efficax is definitely like a leading tool in the compressionism movement, which I'd love to talk
Mhm.
a little bit more about that too. Like this term compressionism, I first heard it from you. And I
Mhm.
absolutely believe that it encapsulates the on-chain movement in like a perfect way.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how did you come across that? Was it just an idea that popped in your head? Or like was it formulated or how did you come up with that?
Yeah, so one thing I think folks know about me is I definitely give credit where credit's due. This one is a bit of a weird one. I started posting from time to time, almost never videos, almost always like just photos, the same stuff I'm posting on Twitter. I post on TikTok just because I'm there all the time and might as well see if, a different art community would enjoy this work. And someone randomly commented, like, "Oh, I love compressionism." And I was just like, wow, that perfectly encapsulates what I'm trying to achieve and what kind of the people around me are trying to achieve. So I started looking it up, and the term basically didn't exist. There's a guy in the space named Nathaniel Stern who's very well respected, a great artist who has a project called Compressionism, which is very cool, and some of the same principles, but the term itself hadn't been used as like an art form before. So started digging into that and just kind of going back in the history, and would love to continue doing that. But yeah, like you said, it's a really simple term that encapsulates the essence of what we're trying to do here, which is an artistic movement similar to the Impressionists, but using computers and using these kind of random algorithms to produce a more digital feeling.
Yeah, like this movement is truthfully the most like long-term outlook that you can have for crypto art. Because like we just recently saw Known Origin, Async, they're dropping
Mm,
off, they're closing down. They said it for 2 years we're going to continue pinning our IPFS links or art, however you'd explain it.
mm,
What's your take on crypto platforms? What's your take on IPFS? What's your take on Arweave and
yeah,
overall the preservation of art in this space?
yeah. So I think there's a couple different things that feed into it. I think I have a lot of different opinions than other people in the on-chain art space, specifically because I started in a very not on-chain art. Like a lot of the stuff I was doing was putting big images on IPFS and things like that. My perspective of it is more about what constitutes the artwork and where we're kind of thinking about that. So with an NFT, the thing that you own is this certificate of ownership that points somewhere else generally. So IPFS, Arweave, whatever else. And then that's usually the metadata, which points to an image somewhere else. So it's kind of this, you're owning this map to the artwork. And I have this painting in front of me that my grandmother bought. It's one of the only pieces of fine art that's in my family. And my grandmother bought it and passed on to my father, who kind of gave it to my mother, who gave it to me. And on the back of this painting is the written description of that chain of custody. It's this person bought it here at this time, gave it to this person, who gave it to this person. And I started to kind of think about digital art in much the same way. So it's less about the longevity to me, although that does play into it, and more about the fact that the provenance of the artwork, the metadata of the artwork, the everything that makes the artwork is all combined into this single place. So instead of having a proof of ownership point to a link that points to a link, the proof of ownership contains the artwork itself. And I think that's a cool thing to unite those different aspects where, like, I always say, sure, Ethereum could go down or start hiking these gas fees or storage fees sky high to make it completely irrational to continue to do crypto art on mainnet Ethereum. They could absolutely do that. But when they do that, it makes the entire artwork itself obsolete in a way, right? Like if you're ruining the ownership of the artwork and you're ruining the artwork, then at a certain point, none of this ever mattered anyway. So it's just a different perspective of looking at it where instead of proving I own an image that's right click saved as on my computer or is on some centralized or decentralized system somewhere, the proof of ownership is the artwork in its entirety, full stop. And I think that's something that's really cool. And I think that's pretty unique in this space. With the known origin stuff, and I think with all IPFS stuff, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about how decentralized it really is. And that's just stuff that'll take time to educate people about. But I think it's a smaller symptom of the bigger outlook, which is just understanding what your artwork is and where it is and what people are actually buying. And I think it's up to artists and collectors alike to do the work to understand that rather than just see image I like, buy image I like.
Yeah, really, really well put. So ultimately, like when we're buying an NFT, for the people listening out there, say like we're explaining like they're five, like when we're buying an image, we are essentially, in the case of IPFS, buying a link that is stored in some centralized location,
Yeah.
basically. Right? Is that
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah. So IPFS, technically speaking, is decentralized. Um, the reality of it is a little bit different just because there's a lot of stuff on IPFS. IPFS itself is free to use technically. So a lot of times those things kind of get lost or people just refuse to serve the image unless you pay them. So a lot of times you're relying on a pinning service or some basically paying somebody to keep it active on the IPFS network. And that's the issue you run into a lot of times with IPFS is that even though it's quote unquote decentralized, you kind of gotta keep paying somebody to keep putting it out there. But yeah,
Yeah.
what you're buying is essentially you're writing on the chain similar to how you would write that you gave somebody money. You're writing that this person owns this kind of invisible ethereal token. That token is provided a link to the metadata and then to the image itself.
Very interesting. So how do you compare that with Arweave? Is it the
Arweave
same
is a
thing?
bit interesting. I haven't dove into the tech of it too much. I unfortunately got kind of a forced education in IPFS a couple of years ago when I started having to pay big bills to be serving my silly art that nobody was buying. Arweave is a bit different in that you don't have to continue paying. It's another sufficiently decentralized service, which is to say it's centralized, but they have some decentralization aspects. Um, I think it's a little bit more of a blockchain forward solution. IPFS is a bit older. Things like Filecoin are built on top of IPFS.
Right.
So it's just kind of a different beast. I look at Arweave in a little bit higher regard, but again, I don't know too much about the tech, which is another
Okay.
thing. It's just like these these things are complicated. Serving files is very complicated. You look at what
Mhm.
someone like Facebook does to put crappy AI images on your feed. It's like very technically complex. And with on-chain art in particular, there's this notion that it's this like crazy, super out there concept when the reality of it is much simpler than the alternate options. So, yeah,
Right.
I I definitely categorize it as like on-chain art is the best. The file size limits are very restrictive. It's not for everybody, and it's especially not for everybody all the time. You know, it's there's a very few select people who are dedicated to it, like me, that put all of their art on chain. I don't think everybody needs to do that. And then I kind of put, you know, Arweave, IPFS, and then a centralized service in that order down the line.
Right. So with IPFS, right? So you're basically buying a link that's inscribed on the
Mm,
blockchain.
mhm.
That's accurate pretty much?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. And then with Arweave, it's like a little bit more decentralized, kind of still like a foggy type thing, but you're still basically
Yeah,
buying a link
yep,
that's on the blockchain. And then with
exactly.
on-chain art, not on-chain like base, but like on dash chain,
Fully
right? And
on
that's a different
chain. Yeah.
topic we'll talk about. But yeah, with fully on-chain art on Ethereum mainnet, you're buying essentially bytecode. Is that accurate to say? Or not
Yeah, I
really?
mean it's interesting. It's all just letters and numbers. In all three cases, it's just letters and numbers.
True.
In
Very
the
true.
first two cases, those letters and numbers are linked to somewhere else. And in the third, it's a full representation of the metadata and the art. So it's a much
And it's all in
bigger
one.
set of letters and numbers.
Okay. And then what is like the absolute max? Say money was no object. What is the largest amount you could technically put on chain? Like, is there a limit? Or like, is there a limit like per block, the amount of data? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So per block, the way Efficax works, you can get about 120 kilobytes on chain.
and that's the
That's,
most.
yeah, that's not a lot. You can kind of combine a bunch of different blocks together. I'm not sure the exact metrics, but I know, you know, OpenSea's indexer, which is fetching the images, has super high read gas limits, which is a very long and complicated way to say if money was no object, you could put quite a bit into a single token. Um,
Like a
I would say
gigabyte.
going over a megabyte definitely would not be fun financially, but would be possible.
Interesting. Do you know like what the biggest on-chain artwork is on Ethereum right now?
Hmm. There wasn't a lot of one presence before me other than Ripcash to my knowledge. And by that I mean like
Right.
consistent one presence. Obviously a lot of people have done, you know, on chain and one before that, but consistently doing it, it was pretty much Ripcash. I think he has a few pretty big ones. I think there are some that are in that like 200, 300 KB range. So it's probably something of theirs. Single
Right.
transaction, I maxed out a block around Christmas time, and that is, I'm like 99% sure because I don't think you could do it without Efficax. That is as big as anybody has put on chain. So that was, I believe,
Really?
123 kilobytes.
So is that like, have you then set the record for the largest on-chain piece?
Minted in a single transaction, yeah.
Dude, that's pretty fucking dope.
Yeah, it was
That's sick. You're
also
blazing trails,
expensive.
man. Yes,
I'm
naturally.
just doing what
This
I
is
do.
gonna,
The rest of it falls into line.
I love that. I mean, when you look back at crypto art, which we will, it'll be like something that people talk about and think about and conceptualize in different ways, I guess, in the future of how things are then versus the way that they are now. And I think that they will look at you and be like, this guy blazed these trails and created the tool that potentially becomes the tool that everybody uses. Because what other tool would you use to do this? How is Ripcash putting things on chain before this tool existed? And shout
Yeah,
out
I
to
mean,
Ripcash, by the way.
I'm sure it's all, command line scripts or, loose web apps and stuff like that, because to my knowledge, there's no other like good, reliable way to do it than Efficax. And I
I
wished
mean,
other people would make stuff so that I didn't have to keep maintaining this, but here we are.
damn, you're like the Elon Musk of the on-chain world. Like you're just building the shit that everybody kind of needs, essentially. And like, nobody else is doing it, so you have to do it. And I think it's very noble, and that might be a shitty explanation. I don't know how you take that, but what I mean by that is just like you're blazing these trails because it doesn't exist. So you're starting to you're going to make it exist. And your commitment to it is epic. So cheers to you for all of that. I
Yeah,
want
I
to
mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I think it's easy to see that externally. For me internally, I'm just building stuff that I need and that my friends need, and it just so happens that the market needs it and the people in general need it. Um, I think there's a lot of education that has to happen in the crypto art space as we move forward. So I'm just sharing what I know and hope I can inspire other people to do the same.
Fuck yeah. I want to ask, what was it like working with XCOPY to help him get that initial piece? Fresh Hell is that the name of the piece or is that the actual collection name? I'm spacing on that.
Um, I
I think
think Fresh Hell is the collection.
yeah,
It's been a while, so yeah, Fresh Hell is the collection. ALGO BRO was the
ALGO
first
BRO.
one, and
Yeah,
then Simulacrum
Simulacrum.
is the second one, and those are the only two on the contract. You know, XCOPY is such an interesting character. One of the bigger artists in the space that has been able to stay essentially entirely anonymous. I'm sure there's plenty of people who know who it is, but it's not like public information. Um, Everybody kind of holds him in this super high regard, which is fair. Like he's definitely a pioneer in a lot of different crypto art ways, but the conversations that we had were pretty short, but like very, very chill, I guess,
Yeah,
with
he's a
it,
chill dude.
for lack of a better term. And yeah, so he reached out to me on behalf, well, after Spogel did a collection of on-chain art, just kind of interested in doing something. And I was like, oh yeah,
Nice.
here's the tool, here's kind of the limits, here's the bounds. Costs a lot of money, which you know it costs a lot of money, but I'm sure he's not too worried about that. Um, but
I
yeah,
think he
kind of just
sniped some low
explain
Gwei.
like here it is. Here's what we have. Here's how you use it. It should be straightforward. Let me know if you have any questions. And his first response when he saw the file size limits was like, "Oh yeah, I used to post on Tumblr, which had huge file size limits. I'm not worried about it at all." Which was just like the exact opposite of the response that I get from 90% of people when I tell them like, "Oh yeah, it has to be really, really small." Most people are like, "Oh wow, like I have, a 30 megabyte image that I'm trying to put on chain." It's like, no, that's not going to happen. He was just like, "Yeah, I can figure that out," which I think is admirable, and I think it's a sign of a good artist of just like, "Yeah, I'll figure that out." Yeah, super nice guy. I didn't really do too much at first. When it came to minting time, Efficax at the time didn't actually support additions. But it was a pretty quick ad, and it was something that 20 other people had asked me for, and I'd just been lazy on. So implemented all of that, got a new version pushed out that supported additions, and yeah, he minted no problem. Just like immediately sent me one of the additions, which was so cool. At the
Fuck yeah.
time, I had just gotten off of paternity leave. My baby was in the NICU for 2 days. He's very healthy now, but was in the NICU
Amazing.
for two
Amazing
days,
to
and I
hear.
was staring down some hospital bills and was able to pay those off because of it, which was awesome. But yeah, just like incredibly humble, very casual, very kind. Obviously a busy guy who's got his own stuff going on, but overall, like super, super positive experience interacting with it.
Yeah, he's an absolute stand-up guy. I actually even reached out to him to ask him if he'd want to do a pod, if even like a written version. And he answered, which he totally didn't even have to answer and say, no, I can't. He could have just not answered. But he literally
Yeah,
answers, took the time to be like, hey, man, no, I actually am pretty busy at this current
yeah,
time. I appreciate you asking, essentially something along those lines. And it just shows his character. Like he answers messages. Like he's not like, he doesn't act like he's on a high horse versus other people, despite
for
the
sure.
insanely high regard that everybody has for him. So I have immense respect for him. I love that he
Yeah.
threw a piece on chain, and I think it's so sick that you guys kind of like collaborated in that initial stage. Did you help him beyond any of that besides just giving him the tool? Like, was there any like, hey, like I'm running into this problem, or was he pretty much just
No,
really like self-reliant, just got it done and
yeah,
gave
just
him an
got it
addition
done.
like a homie?
Totally,
Nice.
totally casual, just knocked it out of the park, got it done. So yeah, and that's kind of the beauty of Efficax, right? I get messages from people pretty frequently about like, "Oh, how do I use this? How do I do this? What do I have to do for this?" And it's like you just show up with a file, it walks you through the process, and you click mint, and that's kind of it. Like there's not a lot in between that. It feels a lot like minting on any minting tool these days. So that was the goal with
Yeah.
that, and I'm really glad it worked out in that case, and it's been working out for a lot of people.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about like monetizing Efficax, or is that not something you're interested in? Just making it
Um,
free for the people.
it's a good question. If I ever did, it would be either tip based or like very, very cheap. Efficax at its most central point is an accessibility tool, right? There's nobody's forcing you to use it. It's not necessarily a need that anybody has. If you really, really, really tried hard enough, you can put artwork on chain without it, right? Anybody could. So it's not like this need that people have. It's not something you're being forced to use, and it's really just there to make everybody's life easier. So the way I view it is more of a public good than anything else, right? It's not
Yeah.
really something to build a company out of or a platform out of. And I think that's a lot of my philosophy about what happened this cycle. The people who stuck around for this cycle in NFTs have realized that like these platforms were making $1 million a day or whatever, and now they're all broke and shutting down. And a lot of the reason for that is it's just too much. It's a lot of code, it's a lot of maintenance, it's a lot of security concerns. Whereas building small, bite-sized tools that anybody can use and focusing less on trying to build a company out of it feels like a more sustainable path.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just wanted to kind of see like if you'd thought about it, because also at the same time, like there's so many other ways to monetize things, and what you're doing with that tool, providing that as like basically a public good, is
Mm,
really dope. And I feel like it really is in alignment with the Web3 ethos in a sense, which is
mhm,
just like put it out there, open source essentially for people to use it.
mhm,
And I think that's sick that you've done that. It's definitely helped a lot of people to get into the on-chain game, which leads me also to want to ask you more about like the advancing art platform and the
mm.
concepts that you're working on there. So like, what's the mission with advancing art and how are you doing with that? What's going on there?
Yeah, so it's been a little bit slow moving, especially just I've been focused on this exhibition and very, very busy personally. But the whole idea behind it is kind of what I just talked about, building more bite-sized things, accessibility tools, documentation, blog posts, tutorials, experiments, stuff you get homework with, right? A lot of the stuff that's on the blog there, I call it the columns, is like you can try this out with the dithering tool and then go post it on Twitter right away and talk to people about it, and a lot of education things and all of that. And the whole goal of it is to promote a more community centered, but not in the like, we have a big Discord community and you should buy our NFT, but more of the like, this space should be a space where everybody learns from each other and helps each other, because that's how we're all going to move forward. It's a really like, our little corner of the internet is small. It's niche. It's a pretty small community that cares about what's going on over here. And I think if we try and make money with everything, if we try and promote everything on our own behalf or keep it behind closed doors so that we can make money on it, it's just going to continue beating ourselves up. Whereas kind of rising tide lifts all ships, we we can create a better baseline for ourselves as a community, which will get us more recognition externally, because we can do cooler stuff together than we ever could hiding things away and keeping it to ourselves.
So, what is the mission with advancing art? Is it to basically unite artists in the on-chain realm, or is it beyond just on-chain art? And like, what does it mean to you?
I think for me, it's a home for a lot of my non-artistic work and ideas. And a lot of those things are tools in education for artists, particularly digital artists, people making art with primarily computers. As far as like a mission goes, the only like real mission, the only thing driving it is that I never want to build a platform, right? Like that's the only thing. And A lot of that comes from just like bite-sized things that people can use. It doesn't matter if they're ugly. I saw with Efficax that like people kind of feel comfortable with ugly stuff. You know, we don't have to have white backgrounds and crisp black square borders and fancy sans serif fonts in order for people to be interested in accessibility tools. So just kind of abandoning a lot of the over capitalization, over financialization of artistic tools in favor of just building things for people who need things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think either that everything needs to be like when you take it to market, like looking aesthetically perfect. Like I've never been somebody who's ever really been obsessed with making things look really good when you're creating an MVP. Like it's
Mm,
better to just put it out there, just like you were saying with Efficax. Like it doesn't need to look incredible. It's just like the tool itself is the key, and you can always iterate that beyond. And
mhm.
so advancing art is basically your like where your passion is for art, and you're helping to basically proliferate art through tools, through different things that pop up that you would want to create that people would need within the realm of art,
Mm.
not even just on-chain art.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It definitely goes past on chain art.
Hmm.
Because I think there's a lot to be said about art that doesn't need to be sold even. Um,
True.
yeah, so yeah, that's kind of the idea behind it is just to like have a little bit more scrappy view. I mean, you've been around for long enough. I'm sure you've seen it just as much as I have. If you get a random link to some random platform or new layer two or whatever else, you click it and there's all of these beautiful graphics and these nice taglines, and they hired a professional copywriter instead of doing it through chat gpt, and everything flows nicely and there's these animations, and then you go to it and you can't figure out what it is for 20 minutes. It's just like,
Yeah.
awesome, we created something beautiful that is meaningless. And I try and take the opposite approach to it, which is to create something meaningful, even if it's ugly.
Yeah, 1000%. 1000%. So like right now, your focus, is it basically fully on advancing art and also creating the project that you've been working on, which I'd love to talk more about, by the way.
Yeah,
It looks incredible. I love the nostalgic aspect that you have with it as well. So can you tell me more about like the mission with this project and how you came up with it, the process,
mm,
when did you start making it?
yeah, yeah. So my primary focus right now has just been this project, this exhibition, just because I want it to be as good as it possibly can be. So I've been focusing a lot on that. And I have a day job as well. So I got other responsibilities and things like that. But yeah, the project started out, Stephen, who is kind of the digital head of Virtu Fine Art, a gallery out of Florida. He reached out to me quite a while ago looking to do a commission. He's very interested in on-chain art and wanted a piece for me. And I love commissions because I get to do weird stuff, because I get approval and I get agreement to money before I do the weird stuff. So I did a really weird piece for him, which was this like narrative, heavily animated, half dither, half SVG kind of craziness, which was super fun. Learned a lot. He really enjoyed it, and that all went well. And we kind of just kept talking after that pretty pretty frequently about what it means to be an artist and be curator and be an art gallery and things like that, because there's a lot of misrepresentation of traditional art and traditional art galleries in the space. So we were just constantly talking about that. And then quite a while ago, he reached out and asked if I wanted to do a project with the gallery. So that's kind of how it all started. And I think it made sense having help, having marketing help and things like that to do a project that was technically complex, a little bit weird, but very central to my ideas about art and the space and compressionism and all of that. So I tried to incorporate so much of that into this one this one project, and that's kind of where it kicked off. And it's been a long process of a lot of collaboration with him, just going back and forth and building something that is cohesive and feels like it represents the kind of artwork that I do, and also what I find important about artwork and important about on-chain art in particular. So yeah, it's been an interesting process, but a very good one, and I'm very proud of what we're going to be releasing.
Dude, it looks absolutely sick. The art looks beautiful, and I know there's like physical components involved as well. Is
Mm.
that right?
Yeah, so there's 16 physical pieces of varying sizes, materials, complexities, things like that. And then those tie to the first 16 tokens in the collection are kind of hard coded and minted so that they tie directly back to the physicals.
Are they created with a blotter, or how are you printing them?
Yeah, so I've got my little art robot. I've got two of
Yeah.
them of different sizes. I actually started with one, and then as time went on, got another one to do some bigger pieces. But yeah, basically it just holds a pen and drags it across paper. And the robot itself is very simple and very good at doing that job, doing what you tell it to do. Um, so I had to
Interesting.
do a lot of work to figure out how to represent pixels with pen strokes. Um, and yeah, that's a lot of kind of the texture and the character that gets brought into those physicals.
I love that you're bringing in these like public domain artworks, which also, again, is so in alignment with our space's ethos of having everything be like public domain and CC0. And I know that this collection is also going to be CC0, correct?
Mhm. Yes.
Love that. I love that. And are you like, what is the supply of the collection? Are there any details released just yet on
Yeah.
pricing or supply?
Yeah. So I don't know if we've officially released pricing, but it is final, so I can say it's point 0.1 ETH. The total collection size will be 512 pieces. 16 of those are the physicals, and then we're kind of doing a squiggle style back mint. So the last 32 pieces of the collection will be reserved, and those will be kind of minted to people as gifts or other kind of special circumstances and special things. So yeah, it's an incredibly small collection for the depth of the content. And that was kind of intentional. I think every time we run into a barrier or a line where someone says, this is how you're supposed to do things, I always just want to do the opposite of that. And that kind of resides here in a long form generative art collection, you spend so much time making sure that every single thing that you output is both unique and cool and visually interesting. And because of that, a lot of people crank their collections sky high limits. And in this case, I wanted to like cut that down and make it really intimate so that you could appreciate every single piece that's out there. And then yeah, like you said, it's using all public domain artworks. Some are paintings from like classical German landscape painters, 1600s ish, which is cool. And then you have some impressionist stuff everywhere from late 1800s, early 1900s. There's some early photography stuff like black and white, gelatin print photography, which is super cool. So it's kind of a varied collection, all landscapes from those people and then interpreted by the Ethereum blockchain, by my code on chain, and outputted to what you see, what you buy as a token.
So is it going to be minted in advance and then sold, or will the minter pay the fee to mint the on-chain work? And is it
Mhm.
generated at the time of minting, such as like using the blockchain's hash in that moment, or
Yeah,
is it predefined?
yeah. So there is a capability to like hard code mints, hard code that hash and set it ahead of time. That was mostly reserved for the physicals, and then we have a few ideas for those kind of back half. But yeah, people will mint the piece, and when you go to mint it, all that's happening is that it's generating a random number based on what's out there in the blockchain, the current state, and your address, and how many pieces are left in the collection. It's just generating a number and storing that. And then when someone goes to read the data, OpenSea or whoever else, it actually goes through and produces the artwork when they go to fetch that metadata. And it produces that using the number that you generated when you minted. So it's randomized and kind of captured and snapshotted in the moment that you mint. It's all 100% random at that time. And then forever and ever, you have the same piece of artwork that's able to be generated as a result of that.
That's so sick. Are you using a different platform, like, or like what platform are you using in order to uh, is like basically to have the artworks minted? Are you collaborating with a marketplace, or are you using your own website? I know you mentioned
Yeah,
Lima Studios.
yeah, it'll be on our own site. I believe we'll do the mint through Virtu's site, who's kind of coordinating the sale. But yeah, it all happens on the contract. No platforms involved here. There's very few platforms that could even handle something like this. It's a lot of kind of custom infrastructure and things like that.
Absolutely. And how are the physicals chosen? Are they the 16 physicals that are like, have you already made them, or will
Mhm.
they be chosen? Okay. And then are they just random? So it's kind of like winning this one of 16, luckily, for a minter?
So those are for sale individually through the gallery, and
Oh,
the
super cool.
token will kind of get paired with that. So if you buy the physical, you get the token as well. But yeah,
Dope.
those were a lot of kind of hand picked. The main reason for that mostly being that if I'm spending 20, 40, the biggest one took 80 hours of plot time. If I'm spending that long creating something, I want to make sure it's going to turn out well, look good, and match the physical materials I'm working with. So all of those were kind of chosen by hand and then produced. And yeah, those are all already done, getting framed right now, and getting ready for the show at Loom next week. So
So fucking sick. Where is the Loom or Luma? I don't know if I'm saying it
Loom
correctly.
Studios, yeah, they are
Where is
in
it?
Tribeca in NYC,
So
right
sick,
off
bro.
Broadway and Canal.
Fucking awesome, man.
Yeah,
Congratulations on all of this. How long has this been in the making?
geez, I would think comprehensively about 6 months. I've been super focused on it for about 3 months now.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
So,
it's a lot of work.
so all in all, people are going to mint. It's 0.1 mint price plus the gas fee of minting it, correct?
Yeah, which should be, pretty small, about the same level as minting any NFT.
Really? How did you minimize the fees for gas? Is it just because the file size is just so optimized?
In this case, all of the source images are already stored. So I did a lot of that in this kind of low gas time we were seeing, 1 to 2 GWh. And they're just referred to by the contract. The cool thing about that is that usually when OpenSea or whoever else goes to fetch the metadata, it's just kind of reading and shipping back that link. But you can kind of put any code you want there. And they give you a pretty large bandwidth of how much code you can use. So in this case, there's nothing being stored when you mint other than that random number. So when they go fetch it, they're actually going through and running through my code, which pulls the image, decompresses it, dithers it, color adjusts it, writes all of the metadata. They're actually doing all of that when they fetch my image. So that's kind of the cool
That's
thing
fucking
about
cool.
EVM generated or runtime generated art in that sense.
Dude, you deserve all of the success in the fucking world. I can't wait until this drops. I don't think I'm allow listed. I saw that there was like 3 pieces. I don't know if I own any of your current works, but
I don't
I
know,
think it
time
would be
like the
so
present.
sick. Yeah, yeah. And is that allow list snapshot already done? Or is it
Um,
not
I'll
yet?
probably take the final one on Sunday. I do have like one that I did right now that I'll keep if nobody else buys pieces, but I'll probably take the final one Sunday. And yeah, the trading card collection, Carte, I think has a few pretty approachable editions available. So,
Really cool.
oh, just kidding.
So,
Someone bought all of them. When
oh,
did that
oh, fuck yeah.
happen?
I love that.
All right.
So for the physicals that are accompanied by a digital work, are you auctioning those or is it a flat fee flat price?
I'm not handling that really at all. Steven and Virtue are are handling that, and you can inquire with him if anybody's interested in that. But yeah, I think they're gonna be flat fee.
Sick. That's super cool. I mean, like, I'm sure that they would get sniped up pretty quick if it's only 16 of them and there's a flat fee. But maybe
Yeah,
even exploring an auction style for that might be more advantageous since then you can, you know, people can kind of
yeah, and
like
we talked
fight for
about
them.
stuff like that, as well as like inverting it, having the token mean that you get the physical. I think a lot of this for both Steven and I were big fans of generative art and blockchain art and on-chain art. And I think this was an opportunity, as much as making and selling physicals is awesome, this is an opportunity as well for traditional art collectors, the people who collect, Warhols and Lichtensteins and pairings, those kind of people to go and see a physical, real life piece of art and start to understand the complex digital process that went into making it. So, just as much as it is physical representations of this blockchain work, and I think a lot of people who are interested in on-chain art are interested in that, it's also an opportunity for it to be in a gallery and have more traditional art collectors come by and take the time to understand how the work was made. And that's something that luckily Stephen is very passionate about, so he's able to kind of communicate that to those people. So for that reason, like, I'm not too concerned about the price of it. I don't I don't even know what price. We have a pretty big range that I gave him. I don't even know what price they're gonna sell for or how long it's gonna take. But that market does typically take a bit longer to try and understand the art, because it's not nearly as liquid if they want to get rid of it. You know, they're buying it to appreciate it and to put it up
Yeah.
in their homes.
Yeah, I don't imagine people would be buying it to just immediately try to flip. You know, I think that it would
Yeah,
be
exactly.
absolutely 99% of the intention is to appreciate that work. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
Are they hand signed by you?
Yep. Yeah. So everyone's signed. It has most of them have short titles in front, and then the edition count in front, and then they have longer titles, a bit of a description about the materials on the back. So yeah, they all have all of that. They'll all be framed as well, which is really cool. That's something I've always had
Love
trouble
it.
with personally, just because shipping frames is a whole lot harder than shipping
It's
a piece of
tricky.
paper. Um, yeah, all signed, all dids, all one of ones, and that's a pretty cool thing.
Dude, you're a fucking legend, not only in the making, but also you're already, in my opinion, have absolutely cemented yourself as a legend of this space. And I love how you're trailblazing continuously, and it's incredibly inspiring as well. I've never put anything on chain yet, but you really do inspire me, especially after this interview, to really get my work on chain and like
Mm.
experiment there and do fun stuff on chain. And I mean, I would love to do an on chain generative collection someday. And hearing all about this is super inspiring. So I really do wish you the absolute best of luck with the drop, and to all the collectors out there that will get these works, Godspeed to them. So honestly, man, I'm stoked. When is the drop date?
Yeah, so we haven't announced it yet, just because there's a few things that still have to fall in line. We're hoping to do it like early afternoon, the day of the exhibition. So on the first is when the allow list phase will start. Um, Over allocated allow
Sick.
list, everybody gets 3 pieces to mint if they want to, and then public drop afterwards. So
I love it, man. So that's basically Thursday. So 6 days from now.
yeah, yes.
Nice. How are you feeling?
um, I vary back and forth between very, very excited and very, very anxious. I think, there's a lot of work and a lot of effort put into this project. I'm nervous for things to go wrong. I'm not really nervous about selling pieces, just because I think I've done my job. I've put together a cohesive collection that is meaningful to me, and I think will be meaningful to others. Yeah, just hoping everything goes smoothly with the smart contract and the exhibition and all of that. But other than that, like I said, I'm really, really proud of what we've put together here. I'm thankful to Stephen for pushing me and pushing me and pushing me, because it's one of the things I love about collaborating with good people is that you just keep getting pushed forward. And yeah, I'm really excited for everybody to get their hands on it and see it in person and things like that.
I'm super, super excited for you. Definitely going to be keeping a close eye. And I wish you the absolute best of luck with the entire drop. I think you absolutely are right. You've done the work, you've created something cohesive, something incredibly meaningful. It's a complex process. And I also saw that you're going to be speaking with Alejandro Cartagena today in about an hour.
Mm,
So super excited to listen in on that and hear that conversation. I have a lot of respect for him and what he's done as an artist and also in this space. So
mhm.
that'll be dope, man. And I have no doubt that people will absolutely gobble these up. So it's going to be really sick, and you absolutely deserve what's coming, man. Um, I'm super excited. That's awesome. And dude, just keep crushing it out there. Keep doing this, like pushing these bounds and inspiring other people by just blazing your own path. It's really dope to see. So congrats, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm I mean, making art is kind of a spiritual experience. It's something that I think people who don't identify as artists might not understand. It's not really a choice that I'm making. It's something that I feel
Right.
compelled to do and compelled to share. And I'm just excited for the opportunities I get to actually share. Um,
Hmm.
and I think this is a big one. I think doing things through code and doing things with CC0 images and all of that, I think it's a very unique project, and I think it's very blockchain forward in a way that a lot of people are not thinking about blockchain and crypto art in this way. So yeah, I'm excited for it. However the chips fall, I'm really proud of what I put together.
And that's the best place to be in, because they're really like when you create something amazing that you're really proud of, you've already won. Like the work has been done. So you already won because you already just have put out into the world the thing that has come through you. And commenting on what you're saying about like you didn't like, it's just happening, right? It's like people
Yeah.
talk about, oh, I wish I could be an artist and like things like that. But in reality, it's not really a choice that you make to be an artist. Like it kind of chooses you, in my
Yeah.
opinion, if that makes any sense. It's like it chooses you, like it comes through you. It's like your duty in a sense to put it out, because the idea then has embedded itself and it's like, okay, now I know this is something I have to do. And it's not
Mhm.
really a choice at that point. And I think that's the most beautiful type of art that is made, is not like, hey, okay, like I'm going to make this to get this. Like in reality, what you're doing is expressing an energy that's come through you. We're like the conduit for the energy to be put into art. That's the way I think about it. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
when we
agree.
talk about, longevity, a lot of people will point to on-chain art as like, oh, this is going to last forever because it's on this blockchain forever. And I think the way I think about longevity is more about just being real and being honest and making art from the soul, because it's, a spiritual practice in a lot of ways. It's a deeply personal practice in a lot of ways. And I think that will last so much longer than any piece of paper or any computer chip ever will, because that, like, communicating ideas and communicating the essence of something is much, much more difficult, but a much, much more valid approach than just selling things or creating things to last so that people buy them more.
It's absolutely a step further that you're describing there than just like people ask, does this need to be on chain? And like the answer, if it's just like about the preservation of it, that's kind of like surface level in a sense.
Hmm.
It's really like, the spiritual aspect of making something and having it flow through you and viewing it as such is, I think, half of that battle in a sense. I mean, battle might not be the right word, but like half of the idea is like the spiritual aspects of the art flowing through you. And the other half is like the product that ends up coming out of that being something that you really like. It's like almost to me, I just kind of like black out in a sense when I'm making stuff. And then the
Hmm.
finished product is almost as surprising to me as it is to someone who's never seen it before.
Yeah.
So it's unique in that way. It's interesting, right? Like,
Yeah. And it's one
I
of
don't
the
know why
things I
it's like
love
that.
about computer art specifically. The kind of stuff that I do is so much of it is driven by randomness or unpredictability that it's just, yeah, exactly what you just said on steroids, where it's like I'm creating something based off of my experience and kind of from my soul to communicate some sort of message. And then I'm letting the automated processes and the computer processes kind of have their way with it. And that's you know, a lot of how we've communicated as a society has been through through these text-based social media and through these compressed images that are flying across wires. And it's just such an interesting process to kind of dive into that and bring that to the surface.
Truly. Man, I'm stoked for you and for your drop, and beyond that, just for the impact you've made on the space. I'm super proud of you and everything you've done, and proud to call you a friend and a homie, and super excited and inspired as well. Like just listening to you today, either like further inspires me as an artist, and I love that. So man, keep crushing, keep doing you, keep being Did. And I think you've got an incredibly solid mindset and head on your shoulders when it comes to this game. And man, you're definitely in it 5 the art. That's for fucking sure.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's sometimes against my will, but yes.
Man, well, I think this is a great place to wrap up. I know you have that other call, so I don't want to kind of jam pack too close to that because I know that's coming up. I really appreciate you coming through today, man. Huge respect to you as an artist and as a human being. I think you're an absolutely dope MFer, and I'm stoked for what's ahead for art as a whole and this space as a whole, and for you,
Mm,
for myself, for everybody involved who's letting art flow through them. I think it's an incredibly beautiful thing. And I love conversations like these that help proliferate that idea even further and make it even a little more tangible for people to understand, like, yes, like this is the way to think about this practice. It's not just sitting down to like grind out something. It's like you're actually sitting down with the intention of letting something flow through you. It's not about us as much as it is the energy that ends up kind of like magnetizing to us and then through us. So
mhm.
I really enjoyed this conversation today, man. Thank you again so much for coming on the pod. And you're always welcome back anytime if you ever want to talk about anything else that you're working on or just get back in the topic of on-chain art. Maybe even get like a multi person pod going on the topic of on-chain and
There you
just
go.
have an epic time. But man, good luck with your drop and keep cruising. Godspeed, man, and much love.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to have a chat. It was good talking to you. Always fun talking about this stuff. And yeah, I hope there's something for everybody to learn.
Definitely. Absolutely. This one will be one I'll listen back for sure. And there's a lot of golden nuggets in here, mentality wise. And also hearing you speak about the creation of your art, I think is very inspiring. So, hell yeah.
Yeah,
But
appreciate it.
yeah, of course, man. Of course. Well, we'll wrap this one. I appreciate you did. Thanks again for coming on and good luck with your drop, brother. And
All right.
I'll be listening on that next space.
All right. Sounds good. See you around, man.
All right. Later, man. Peace.